So, on this channel, here's what we've covered so far. We've covered Rome at multiple eras, from its basically beginning all the way to the Byzantines. We've covered France, mainly the Napoleonic era and, the revolution. We've covered Germany, mainly from the unification process from Prussia to the German Empire. And what else have we covered? Oh, we technically covered a portion of the Greeks, at least through Alexander and Pyrrhus of Epirus. So those are, I think, that come to my head, the big areas that we've covered, through series on this channel. But I think now it's time we set our sights somewhere else and give someone else the attention. And so I've decided we're going to be learning about Russia. So we're going to be covering for the next few Saturdays almost all of Epic History's Russia series, from the Civil War to the history of it. And we're just going to be giving Russia a lot of limelight, because Russia has appeared on this channel, again, through the Napoleonic Wars and through World War One, and we also covered the revolution in Oversimplified. So yeah, I think now we're actually gonna just mainly focus on it and it alone, and really learn more about. So yeah, for now we're just gonna be mainly only focusing on Russia and learning more about it. So yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than we should probably get into it. And like I said, the main parts I only really know about Russia are really just the revolution parts and the rise of communism, from Lenin and Stalin, because that's the only part of Russian history we learn here in America, at least from where I'm at, California. So it's going to be interesting to learn a little bit more about it, And yeah, I don't really have much else to add other than we should probably get right into it. So let's watch Epic History's History of Russia, Part 1, From Tribes to Tsars.
For thousands of years, the lands known today as Russia and Ukraine were inhabited by nomadic tribes and mysterious Bronze Age cultures. The only record they left were their graves. In the great open grasslands of the south, the steppe, they buried their chieftains beneath huge mounds called kurgans. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus called these people Scythians. Their lands were overrun by the same nomadic warriors who brought down the Roman Empire. The land was then settled by Slavs. They shared some language and culture, but were divided into many different tribes. Vikings from Scandinavia, known in the east as Varangians, rode up Russia's long rivers on daring raids and trading expeditions. According to legend, the East Slavs asked a Varangian chief named Rurik to be their prince and unite the tribes. He accepted and made his capital at Novgorod. His dynasty, the Rurikids, would rule Russia for 700 years. His people called themselves the Rus and gave their name to the land. Rurik's successor, Oleg, captured Kiev, making it the capital of a new state, Kievan Rus. A century later, seeking closer ties with the Byzantine Empire to the south, Vladimir the Great adopted their religion and converted to Orthodox Christianity. He is still venerated today as the man who brought Christianity to Ukraine and Russia. Yaroslav the Wise codified laws and conquered new lands. His reign marked the golden age of Kievan Rus. It was amongst the most sophisticated and powerful states in Europe. But after Yaroslav's death, his sons fought amongst themselves. Kievan Rus disintegrated into a patchwork of feuding princedoms. Just as a deadly new threat emerged from the east. The Mongols under Genghis Khan had overrun much of Asia. Now they launched a great raid across the Caucasus Mountains and defeated the Kievan princes at the Battle of the Kalka River, but then withdrew. 14 years later, the Mongols returned. A gigantic army led by Batu Khan overran the land. Cities that resisted were burned, their people slaughtered.
You know, I had heard that, infamously, or famously rather, that, people who've tried to invade Russia obviously never succeed. Napoleon couldn't do it. I believe it was the Swedish, previously before Napoleon, who also tried invading Russia, and also, again, I think it's the Swedish or Switzerland. You know who I'm talking about. The detail escaped me. Wait. Okay, I had to double check. Yeah, it was Sweden. They tried to invade Russia. They failed. Hitler, who took most of mainland Europe, he tried to beef with Russia, and he failed, And point is, usually it's not... most people fail in invading Russia, though I have heard very often that the Mongols did it. Though, obviously, it was an earlier Russia. I think, like he said, they're going by the Rus, and I believe a much smaller Russia than all the previous people mentioned tried to take. Again, I've just heard the Mongols did it. I've never really looked much into the details. Never really took the time to. But it seems like epic history is illuminating, that.
The city of Novgorod was spared because it submitted to the Mongols. Its prince, Alexander Nevsky, then saved the city again, defeating the Teutonic Knights at the Battle of the Ice, fought above a frozen lake. He remains...
Yeah, there's a famous... The Battle of the Ice, there's a famous telling that the ice broke underneath and essentially drowned a bunch of people. And I mainly know this because I'm a huge, a Song of Ice and Fire nerd from, George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones and all that. And, one of the books that has yet to come out, may never come out, to be frank, The Winds of Winter, there's, a big theory that Stannis Baratheon is going to break the ice to defeat the upcoming Bolton army. And, in history, the Battle of the Ice, there's a telling that, the ice shattered beneath the enemy army. And though I have to mention, there is debate among historians if that part actually happened, as if the knights' heavy armor actually broke the ice beneath them and they drowned. I think there is actually debate about that, so I'm not going to say that with 100% certainty that even happened, but it is a famous thing that is associated with that battle, even if it didn't happen. So yeah, that's actually how I learned about that battle, because I'm a big Song of Ice and Fire nerd, and then it led me down a rabbit hole through theories of learning that specific battle. So yeah, let's get moving.
One of Russia's most revered heroes. The Mongols ruled the land as conquerors. Their new empire was called the Golden Horde, ruled by a Khan from his new capital at Sarai. The Rus princes were his vassals. They were forced to pay tribute or suffer devastating reprisal raids. They called their oppressors Tatars. They lived under the Tatar yoke. Alexander Nevsky's son, Daniel, founded the Grand Principality of Moscow, which quickly grew in power. Under the great Uzbek Khan, the Tatars converted to Islam. A rising power, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania defeated the Tatars at the Battle of Blue Waters and conquered Kiev. 18 years later, Dmitry Donskoy, Grand Prince of Moscow, also defeated the Tatars at the Great Battle of Kulikovo Field.
Join large-scale battles with military vehicles. The online action game War Thunder has received a major
After years of infighting, the Golden Horde now began to disintegrate into rival khanates. Constantinople, capital and last outpost of the once great Byzantine Empire, fell to the Turkish Ottoman Empire. Some hailed Moscow as the Third Rome, the seat of Orthodox Christian faith. Now Rome and Constantinople had fallen. Meanwhile, the Grand Princes of Moscow continued to expand their power, annexing Novgorod and forging the first Russian state. At the Ugra River, Ivan III of Moscow faced down the Tatar army and forced it to retreat. Russia had finally cast off the Tatar yoke. Under Grand Prince Vasily III, Moscow continued to grow in size and power. His son, Ivan IV, was crowned the first Tsar of Russia.
Ivan the Terrible. Yes, I know about Ivan the Terrible. His name is infamous. Like I said, even I'm not well learned in Russian history, but I've heard of Ivan the Terrible and some of the wild things he did. I wonder if he's gonna go into any specifics, but probably one of the most famous Tsars. You know, I only say that because like he's probably like one of the few I knew, and yeah.
He would be remembered as Ivan the Terrible. Ivan conquered Tatar lands in Kazan and Astrakhan, but was defeated in the Livonian War by Sweden and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Ivan's modernizing reforms gave way to a reign of terror and mass executions, fueled by his violent paranoia. Russia was still vulnerable. Raiders from the Crimean Khanate were able to burn Moscow itself. But the next year, Russian forces routed the Tatars at Molody, just south of the city. Cossacks now lived on the open steppe, a lawless region between three warring states. They were skilled horsemen who lived freely and were often recruited by Russia and Poland to fight as mercenaries. Ivan the Terrible's own son, the Tsarevich, fell victim to one of his father's violent rages, bludgeoned to death with the royal scepter.
Yeah, that's the one I remember hearing about, him murdering his son. That's I remember that being the one that I came to learn about, just like, oh boy, man.
The Cossack adventurer Yermak Timofeyevich led the Russian conquest of Siberia, defeating Tatars and subjugating indigenous tribes. In the north, Arkhangelsk was founded, for the time being Russia's only seaport linking it to Western Europe, though it was icebound in winter. Ivan the Terrible was succeeded by his son, Fyodor I, who died childless. It was the end of the Rurikid dynasty. Ivan's advisor, Boris Godunov, became Tsar. But after his sudden death, his widow and teenage son were brutally murdered, and the throne seized by an impostor claiming to be Ivan the Terrible's son. He too was soon murdered. Russia slid into anarchy, the so-called Time of Troubles. Rebels and foreign armies laid waste to the land, and the population was decimated by famine and plague. Polish troops occupied Moscow. Swedish troops seized Novgorod. The Russian state seemed on the verge of extinction.
It's kind of cool seeing a bit of early Poland, you know, the Polish, because from everything we covered from like Poland you know, usually they're kind of already not doing well by the Napoleonic Wars onward, and even to like World War II, where they just get jumped by Hitler and Russia. But you know, there is what we learned a lot about covering the Napoleonic Wars, animosity, at least with like Tsar Alexander towards the Polish, not wanting them to like reform or be their own thing. So I don't know, it's kind of cool to see how far back it goes. I'm sure we'll probably be seeing more of Poland, kind of getting more insight to that. But yeah, I love this. You know, it's very good to be learning about this, and we're gonna be on a journey for a while now, learning about Russia and what exactly is going on. So this was a really cool first part. Really like it, learning a lot about things I did not know about, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the series. So I guess I'll see you next time, guys, in part 2. Until then, stay safe.